Welcome in to another episode of Home Field Advantage. Hope you're all having a great start to 2025, wherever you may be across our great country or our great land. My name is Will Highland. It's January 4th, 2025, and this is the first episode of season 7 of Home Field Advantage. Yesterday marked 6 years since I launched the podcast on January 3rd, 2019. So interesting that we are now in season 7 after 6 full years on the air with you all, assuming that's still what we say in the podcast world. So I thank you all for listening for 6 seasons. If you've been there since the beginning, if you just joined us recently, that's fine too. Of course, we're happy to have you as we embark on another year talking sports here in the beautiful state of Lisbon, beautiful state of Maine, beautiful town of Lisbon and beyond. Happy to be doing it again. All right, pleasantries aside, we're going to start with an unpleasant topic, and that's the situation going on with the New England Patriots, very much unfolding still as we speak. And part of the reason I talk about this a lot is because over the past 6 years, the Patriots have been a focal point of this show. A lot of my listeners, you're based up here in New England like I am, and you are a Patriot fan. What I'm interested in knowing more about as we embark on 2025 is um, is the is the development of what this team looks like. All right, because there's been a lot of changes. And I would ask for predictions, and I forgot to do that. So perhaps I'll ask tomorrow afternoon or Monday afternoon when people are more likely to be on social media. I did not ask for predictions yet for 2025. I had wanted to do that. And so I didn't have any. Maybe I can read those at a later date. Um, but I digress with the Patriots here. The situation um, is that we are heading into a week 18 game, I guess now that there's 17 games on the schedule. We're heading into a week 18 game. And I told you last week about, ending the cycle of losing and how it doesn't really matter if you get the number one pick or not at this point because you have your quarterback and you have so many positions of need that you're going to be able to find somebody to fill one of those positions. It's not like last year where it was very clear they needed a quarterback and that they needed to be in the top three in order to ensure that they got either Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels. So we're not dealing with that situation last year. Thankfully, we got our quarterback in last year's draft because this year's draft, there's not a lot of QB talent. I'm not sold on Cam Ward, and I don't think Shadur Sanders is going to be very good in the NFL. So, in Quinn Ewers, I'm not even sure if he's going to stay for his last year of eligibility or not. He's going to make more money playing for somebody else in college football than he will as a rookie in the NFL, probably uh, at this point with all of his endorsements and stuff. So perhaps we'll talk about that later. But there's not even somebody like Quinn Ewers that you can point to as a can't miss prospect. In fact, if Drake May or J.J. McCarthy were in the draft this year, even though they were considered maybe the less sexy picks in 2024, they'd probably be number one and number two in this draft. So thankfully, the Patriots don't have to deal with that. So in this week 18 game, their 17th game of the year, they're squaring off against the Buffalo Bills at Gillette Stadium. All right. And they're also contending with the New York Giants for the number one overall pick. This creates some weird parallels between some Patriots seasons that were very much not like this one. You might ask what I mean by that. Okay. The Patriots in 2007 were competing with the Giants and the Patriots in the final week of the season, and the Patriots had to win their final game in order to continue and conclude their 16-0 regular season. Fast forward a few weeks, those two teams played, of course, in the Super Bowl. It was the most heartbreaking sports loss probably of my lifetime, and the Patriots lost in the Super Bowl and finished the year 18-1, and the Giants are Super Bowl champions. We've come a long way from that because the Giants and the Patriots are, instead of trying to duel out for either an undefeated season or a Super Bowl title, the last week of the year, the Patriots and the Giants are trying to uh, secure the number one pick, possibly, and they might even be trading with each other depending on what happens in the upcoming game. That's the first weird parallel. Now, in 2014, the Patriots hosted the Buffalo Bills in the last game of the season at Gillette, and the Patriots had already um, wrapped up the number one overall seed. If I remember correctly, the Broncos had lost to the Bengals the week before, which had therefore um, negated any chance at Denver overtaking the Pats because the Pats had the tiebreaker over both Cincinnati and Denver in 2014. You obviously remember the on to Cincinnati game in 2014, where New England demolished the Bengals, and then a few weeks later, in I believe early November, they beat up on the Broncos. So they had those wins in hand. Patriots had already wrapped up home field advantage, no pun intended, in the postseason. So New England didn't have anything to play for in Week 17 against the Bills at Gillette. In fact, Tom Brady, I believe, only played a quarter. In fact, I actually pulled up the box scores, so we'll get to that here. Um, Jimmy Garoppolo played the majority of snaps. He was 10 of 17 for 90 yards. LeGarrette Blount had 10 carries for 62. And Brandon LaFell had 4 catches for 70 yards. And the Bills sort of walked away with a win there. And the Bills weren't playing for anything. I believe they were already out of playoff contention, and the Patriots only scored field goals, and that was the end of the story. We didn't see Tom Brady in the second half. We saw Jimmy G, and the Patriots finished 12-4 rather than 13-3, and it didn't matter because 2 weeks later they hosted the Ravens in that amazing game with the double pass and everything, and then we went on to this AFC Championship game and Deflategate, and then the Super Bowl with the Seahawks, and everyone rode off into the sunset, merry and bright. Issue is that's what the Bills are in right now. We flipped. We're now the team in the last week of the year with nothing to play for at Gillette Stadium. And the Bills, of course, are stuck in that 2 seed, which generally would have provided them a bye, but the NFL decided that they wanted, tens of millions more dollars, so that's why we have 7 playoff teams. So the Bills are stuck in the 2 seed. They can't overtake Kansas City despite beating them in November. And the Bills are not going to play their starters more likely than not. So this game is going to be like a JV game, a lot like that one was in 2014, almost 10 years ago to the date. Difference is the Patriots once again are in a monumental um, uh, swing of favor here in this game. Instead of course, like in the Giants game, playing for their 16-0 season, they were possibly playing for the number one pick. And similarly, instead of securing home field advantage already heading into the week, it's now the Bills who have secured their playoff spot and have nowhere to move. So some weird parallels between 2014, 2007, and 2024-25. But nevertheless, this is what you experience as a Patriot fan when your team goes from perennial Super Bowl contender to perennial question mark. All right. And part of these question marks, as we continue throughout this segment here, are that it's also been 5 years to the date since the Patriots last played in a playoff game at Gillette Stadium. That was 5 years ago today against the Tennessee Titans, which was, of course, Tom Brady's last game as a New England Patriot. We all remember that night, for better or for worse, depending on who you're a fan of. That was the literal end of the Patriots dynasty, not the one that Max Kellerman or any of those other bozos on the four-letter network were trying to sell us on for years. In fact, it was it finally came true on January 4th, 2020. Now, why do I bring that up? The reason I bring that up is because that was the last time, as I mentioned, the Patriots hosted a playoff game. It was also the last year in which the New England Patriots won the AFC East. And um, it was also the last game in which we saw the Patriots as a possible Super Bowl contender. And I'm reminded talking about those those games um, that happened, with the Giants, with the Bills, with the Titans. As we're going through this little history lesson here, I'm reminded right now of simply how far the Patriots are from being a Super Bowl contender. I don't think they're far away from being a playoff contender. I think that if they can have a good offseason, they can contend for a playoff spot next year, especially given that the AFC lets in 7 teams now, and there's really only four that I look at as probably being a contender next year too. So there's some wiggle room. The Kansas City is going to be there. I think San Diego, the LA Chargers are going to be there. I think the Ravens, Steelers, are going to be there, and then we'll see about the Bills, of course. So that's 4 or 5 teams. The Patriots, I think you can look back at this season and say, okay, we're in the mix. We could be a playoff team if some things had gone differently and maybe there was some better execution early on in the season in some of those winnable games. But the reason I'm reminded of all these points in recent Patriot history is not only because they're so far from being a playoff team, but Gillette Stadium, that playoff environment 5 years ago tonight. When was the last time we had one of those games? Was it Brady's return? Was it? I mean, I was there a few weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago at this point, against the Rams. That felt pretty good early on. Game got away from New England. Wasn't really as loud. It was a 1 o'clock kick. That game against the Titans, I believe, was an afternoon, late afternoon, early evening kick. So, I mean, when was the last time the Patriots had buzz at a primetime playoff kickoff, let alone regular season kickoff? Um, the regular season games, maybe they've had a couple home games. Dallas, Brady's comeback. There was a game against the Titans not that a couple of years ago where Titans were currently in the 1 seed and the Patriots were battling. That was Mac Jones' rookie year. But really, since 2021, there hasn't been that big Gillette Stadium crowd. And the Gillette Stadium crowd has come into the conversation this week because we've had to have a discussion about the fire Mayo chants and the booing that's gone on in New England. And there's been some comments made. Devon Godshaw says, the Patriots fans are spoiled. Jelani Tavai says they need to know their place. And so there's been some comments made by some lower tier or mid-tier Patriot names out there, for lack of a better term, about the crowd at Gillette Stadium. And what's that crowd going to look like on Sunday if you've got a JV match and everyone wants to play Joe Milton? What if Joe Milton goes out there and throws 3 picks in the first half? And the Bills aren't playing for anything. They've got their third stringers, and it's probably going to be 20 degrees. There's nothing to play for. People are probably more interested in the other games in the NFL that might actually determine playoff seeding. So, what kind of environment are we looking at? And as far as the booing is concerned, or the fire Mayo chance, I mean, you can have your own opinion on whether John Mayo should be the coach. We're going to have plenty of time to talk about that. I think we'll have a clearer picture after this weekend. I don't think he'll be fired. I also didn't think that Jim Montgomery was going to be fired by the Bruins. I didn't think that Alex Cora was going to come back after his year suspension for the cheating scandal. None of that. I didn't think Ime Udoka was going to not be able to. Never mind. I won't go there. But in New England coaches in the last few years, there's been some question marks. I didn't think Bill was ever going to leave. Like so there's been some turnover and changes made. I didn't think Bruce Cassidy was going to be fired in 2022. So you can pick multiple examples across the whole New England landscape, and I don't know what to expect. So you can have all your opinions about what the head coach should or shouldn't say, what he should or shouldn't do. But what I think we can all agree on is that it shouldn't be up to the special teams coordinator to have the best reaction to the question. Because as soon as Devon Godshaw and Jelani Tavai went out there and said their things, it turned into a media firestorm. This is something that Belichick was always able to control, with the exception of Deflategate when he told the reporters that they needed to ask Tom about the way he likes his footballs. All right. Beyond that, uh, or in 2014, I suppose, when he said that everybody knew what Brady's age and contract situation were, Belichick has generally been good in his career at turning down the temperature on the media. Issue is Gerard Mayo hasn't had that same environment. Even during Spygate, you never saw Teddy Bruschi or Junior Seau or anybody like that say anything in the media. But now there's this big thing about the fans booing. And what do Jelani Tavai and Devon Godshaw do? They go out there and tell the media what they think. Keon White has said other things. So I believe there's a lot, and then there's a report out from Mark Daniels from the Providence Journal or Mass Live, one of those two publications where he was interviewing unnamed players about what they thought. But I think despite that, we can all agree that the most coherent response to all of this media firestorm should come from Mayo or the Crafts, or at the very least, Elliot Wolf or somebody at the top of the organization. Instead, it's coming from the special teams coordinator. With all due respect, I had no idea his name before yesterday when I saw the video because there was no significant play that happened on special teams this year, good or bad, that I could rep him for or praise him for. So I didn't even know his name. But I'm gonna play some sound. Let's see if it will come over. This is New England Patriots special teams coordinator Jeremy Springer talking to reporters about the saga ongoing with the fans booing at Gillette Stadium. Here's cut one.
I mean, I always say this: like, you don't want to get shot at, don't join the army. Like, I know this profession. Like, I know what it brings, and you guys have had so much success here. I mean, I grew up a Dallas Cowboys fan, right? So, like, as a kid, when we were going to the playoffs, and when I was a little kid, we were going to Super Bowls. I was pissed at the team too when we were losing, right? So, like, I'm all about the team and the fans too. Like, there's people in those stands, and I know because I was a kid once, and my parents couldn't afford to go to football games. Like, they're expensive tickets, and they bring your whole family to the game. Oh, that's $1,000 probably you're spending in one day, and then to lose like we did. I mean, they're upset and they're frustrated, and they should be, right? We need to put a better product on the field, and that's what our job is. So anytime I hear that, I'm like, okay, what can I do better? What can I do better so that they're not doing that next time? Like, what can I do better to be a better coordinator, to be a better coach, to make our players play harder and play better, so that we don't hear that? Because I mean, they have every right to do that, in my opinion. It's sport, man. It's organization. It's professional sports. This isn't. If you don't want to do that, go coach go coach in Alaska for 6-man football, right? I'm serious. Like, then you won't hear that because that's all your families in the stands. But this is different. This is professional football. So this is the way it goes into society, and I'm totally fine with that.
All right, so that's Jeremy Springer. All due respect, did not know who he was before yesterday, but can he be the head coach? Because I like the way he takes accountability. I like Gerard Mayo. I don't think they should fire Gerard Mayo, to be honest, because I think that creates a environment of oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I think it creates an environment of instability that isn't good for Drake May. Not after 1 year. I really don't think so. That's my take as of now. It's subject to change. But Jeremy Springer goes out there and he says what I think every fan understands. And I'm not going to get up on my soapbox because I don't want my knees to hurt any more than they do. But I think that fans, we boo not because we don't like Devon Godshaw as a dude, or we don't like John Mayo as a guy, or we don't like um, or we don't like Drake May or Jelani Tavai or Kendrick Bourne or pick a player. It's not because we don't like them and we're booing you personally. This is different. And he makes a point that I think gets lost. Right? I think players all started as fans, right? And then they stopped being fans when football became their career. And I can see that. I understand that. They're trying to make a living. Difference is they get paid millions of dollars to play a kid's game, okay? And fans, we're still fans. We're still making 40, 50, 60 grand a year trying to enjoy at best a lot of fans. I think the median income in this country is somewhere around there. I'm not an economist. I just play one on TV. But I think that fans understand, like, this is us. Like, we're not rolling in money here. We're not you. It might be your job. Look, I get it. They always say, "Oh, you don't go and boo a doctor, you don't go boo a lawyer, you don't go boo a, traffic cop or a cashier." I understand that, but um, it's part of sports. Sports is a spectacle. All right, the NFL is a spectacle. I think what happens is they players often want sports to be their livelihood without the spectacle. And that's the opportunity cost and trade-off that comes when you do make millions of dollars. Okay, every job has a trade-off. My first job, I was making less than what the current minimum wage is, all right, as a 22-year-old with a college degree, all right? And I didn't love my job. It was a good job. They hired me. I was thankful to be working there. I didn't wake up and be like, I can't wait to go to work. And I don't imagine that every day of the NFL season, an NFL player wakes up and says, "Oh, I can't wait to go train all day and put my body on the line." Obviously. But I understood that work was work and my work was not a spectacle. My job was to do the best for the company and for the customers of the company. Who are the customers of the New England Patriots? Now that's a bigger question in pro sports. Who are the real customers? I'd reckon and say that actually fans like you and me or people that watch on TV or go to the games aren't actually the real customers. The real customers are the gambling companies and the sponsors and advertisers. But that's a different discussion. If if I didn't do my job in when I was 22 years old, I would get fired or laid off. If they don't do their job, they've got guaranteed contracts, a lot of them. If they lose, they get paid the same as if they win. Unless, of course, you go to the Super Bowl and then you get the more game checks in the playoffs and whatever. But for the regular season, unless you have performance bonuses, your salary is your salary whether they win or lose. So they don't understand that, yes, it's their livelihood, it's a job for them, they're doing their best, they're not sucking on purpose, but it's also a spectacle. All right, the NFL is a spectacle and it is a billions and billions of dollar business. And Coach Springer is right when he says there are people that go in the stands and spend $1,000 in one day, and they want to see a good product. You go to a restaurant and you spend $80 for you and your spouse. That's a big, where I come from, that's a huge bill for two people. If the food sucks and the service sucks, are you gonna be like, "Oh, whatever, they tried their best. I guess we'll come back next time"? What if the waiter or the host or the chef said, "You know, they got to know their place"? What do you mean I got to know my place? If athletes want to talk about, "Oh, hey, this is my job, this is my livelihood, but also you fans need to know your place." What other industry are you allowed to say that in? If you go to the mechanic and the mechanic screws up your car and you say, "Hey, like, something, you didn't really do a good job here. I spent a lot of money on this and it didn't work." Oh, well, you got to know your place. You're just a customer. You're just a little peasant out there in the 65,000 seat arena that I tend to play in and get paid millions of dollars to go out there and do, play a sport. The NFL is a spectacle, right? And that's the opportunity cost if you're in the NFL. If you're that good at sports and you're able to make it to the highest level, great. Good on you. You're in the 1% of athletes and you are way more talented at sports than I'll ever be. But you're making millions of dollars. And so if somebody boos you and you tell them that they need to know their place, like, dude, these people are out here barely affording to come to this game. They do it maybe once every several years. And they see a product, they love this team, they support you, they cheer for you when you do well. And when you do poorly, they boo. That's part of the spectacle of sports. That's what makes it different from other industries. But if we're going to treat it like it's the same, which is what players often say, uh, that's an issue. And I think Coach Springer did a great job of putting a razor through that argument and saying, look, like professional sports is a different animal. It's not where the University of Hawaii, where Jelani Tavai played, where nobody ever watches them play. This is the NFL, and they have the New England Patriots were a marquee franchise in the most powerful league in the country. And that's that's where it's coming from. Look at the valuation. Look how much money it costs to go to Gillette Stadium, to park, to get food, to sit there. Being spoiled and knowing your place. Look, if you're gonna say that, then you can't really say that your job's like any other job because, as I pointed out, would you ever hear another industry where the service worker told the customer they needed to know their place? No. So that's my thought. It's frustrating because I like Tavai, I like Godshaw. These are my players on my team that I support, and it's frustrating. All right, what else is frustrating? Really starting off 2025 on a positive note here, but the college football playoff situation is beginning to unravel. And what I mean by that is we spent the majority of my lifetime complaining about the BCS era. Then in the last 10 years, we had the CFP era with the 14 playoff. And then this year we began the 12-year, or excuse me, it feels like 12 years, the 12-team playoff. And my issue with all of this is the 12-team playoff isn't a bad idea. It's really not. I've always think it should really be 16. I don't, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, I don't think there should be buys. And as we saw, the buys didn't really do anything anyway. All the teams that had a buy lost. Um, but I look at the college football playoff, and my solution for college football, as long as we're heading in this direction, where it's essentially professional football on a larger scale than the NFL, like that's what it is. As long as we're heading in that direction, we might as well have relegation. We might as well have no conferences and tiers instead, which we already sort of have with FCS and FBS. You could theoretically have a 12 to 14 game season with tiers. And Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, we already have that. We already have FBS and FCS. It's already set up for an English soccer style relegation system. I think that would fix college football. Think about it. You don't have to be a Premier League or La Liga or Bundesliga expert from Europe to understand that college football in the United States on the gridiron, not the pitch, isn't really that much different. You've got a transfer portal and a transfer window. They have that in international soccer. You have divisions, which we have. in college football. Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. FCS and FBS within Division 1. So we already have divisions. We already have a transfer portal. Recruiting from high school, that already happens in international soccer. Usually there's an academy that a club will have, and you could be recruited out of an academy or into an academy from one club or another. High schools aren't that much different at this point. A lot of these guys will go to prep schools or big high schools in the Southwest or Southeast. So we already kind of have that. There's already oligarchies emerging like there are in professional soccer around the world. It might not be with oil money, but it's with booster money. And where do you think booster money in Texas comes from? So why not just introduce relegation to college football? Why not? How I see that working is, as I pointed out, a 12 to 14 game schedule. All right, let's say tier one, you've got, you could figure out a name for it, sponsor it for all I care. That's what they do in England. You could have tier one is like Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Oklahoma, Arizona, like all those Power Five teams, for lack of a better term. Let's say you have 25 of them, and then you've got, 50 of the second division. You make schedules. You play your regular season, a 10-game regular season against people in your division. And then you can make the divisions even regional if you'd like, or as close to regional as you can. Within those divisions, you have 10 games each within your division, and then a couple maybe across division in your regular season. Or you play your 10-game regular season against your division, and then if you win your division or you're in the top spot in your division, you move up or move down if you're in the bottom. And then if you want to preserve rivalries among different divisions, for example, probably somebody like Virginia and Virginia Tech, or Tennessee and Vanderbilt, Georgia and Georgia Tech, Florida and Florida State, maybe. If you want to preserve some of that, then you would put, some competitions in place, some regional cups like they have in English soccer. You would have, like the Southeast Cup, where you play 2 or 3 games each against your region and you win your cup. And then if you're in the top four in the top division, you play a playoff in December and January to determine the overall champion. And then everyone moves up or down. If you're Bates College here in Lewiston, Maine, and you're in the lower level of Division 3 in the NESCAC, and you win your NESCAC, and you're the best Division 3 team in the country, you move up. Those people move down. If people talk about relegation in American sports all the time, it wouldn't work in baseball. It wouldn't work in hockey. Both of those have affiliate programs. That would be very difficult to unravel. Basketball also wouldn't really work, although they're trying to adopt similar models with their NBA Cup. They would try to introduce a European style model to that, but relegation really wouldn't work in basketball. It would work in American college football. I promise you that. That way, as long as the divisions are sorted, once they are, the rest of it can be taken care of by wins and losses and point differential. I mean, boom. There you go. Wins, losses, point differential. Guess what? If there's ties, you've got point differential. That's how you figure it out. Then you've got guys transferring all over the place anyway. The college football as we knew it in like 2005 to 2010 or even older, that does not exist anymore, okay? NIL, the transfer portal, all that. It's practically a professional sport. You might as well treat it like that. Get rid of conferences, make it separate from the NCAA. The NCAA can still govern college sports under Title IX and make fairness for everyone in other sports. But football is generally a men's only sport. Make it separate. The federal government would step in and it would be very competitive. It would not be a cartel like it's becoming. Federal government would give its blessing for for the economic and political end of it, and then the rest of it would take care of itself. That way, we don't have this enigmatic committee and these weird seedings and these arguments every year. Just win, baby. And if you're a Division two team like Lenore Rhine, where Kyle Duggar went, and you can recruit guys above your weight to come down there, guess what? You might move up. If you're a team like James Madison, who made the move to FBS a few years ago before they were ready, probably. And if you struggle, you head back down to FCS. You make some progress in maybe a lower tier, get some recruiting, you get up there. Next thing you know, you've got money, you've got boosters, you get players from high school, from the transfer portal. It works. It will work. You just have to have somebody that believes in it. And you have to put somebody in charge of it who's not of the system right now. So that's my take. All right, speaking of leagues that are wondering whether they should change or not, the NBA ratings are down. We've all talked about that. I don't want to be the guy that just continually brings bad news and craps on the NBA. But the NBA ratings are down, and Caitlin Clark seems to think it's because we don't understand how good the NBA players are. And I understand. Make no mistake, one of the best female basketball players of all time. She might be the best female basketball player by the time it's all said and done. You don't know. We don't know. There's a lot of people that are out there in the conversation, but she might be that by the end of her career. So I do accept the fact that she knows way more about basketball than I do. She's definitely entitled to her opinion on this. And I think she's taken a lot of unfair criticism from both sides of every spectrum you can think of. But at the end of the day, Caitlin Clark is of the game of basketball. She loves basketball no matter what. She's not like me in that I don't love basketball. I'd like to, but it's hard for me to. And that's what the NBA is struggling with. The diehards are always going to be there. The casuals have left. And one of the reasons the casuals have left is the three-pointer. That's just true. If you ask anybody on the street why they don't watch the NBA, I guarantee at least half of them will say they take too many threes. Now, the sports media talking heads will say that's anecdotal, but just go up and ask somebody. I promise you they'll say that, or they'll say something about player selfishness. Those are really hard things for a league to overcome. It's very hard for a league to overcome an image problem. Major League Baseball took a long time before it ever really recovered from the steroid era, and I'm not sure it ever has. The steroid and the strike era in the 90s, they got it back with the Sosa and McGuire thing a little bit, but baseball's kind of died in the last decade or so, and they've tried to fix it. It hasn't really worked so far. Basketball's heading in that direction. Men's basketball at the NBA level. And they'll say it's, oh well, it's because of load management or the media or the three-pointer. And Caitlin Clark seems to think that it's because of that we don't know how good they are. And she's entitled to that opinion, as I pointed out. No, I know how good they are. There's gonna come a point when an NBA player, and Dan Patrick said this the other day, an NBA player is going to make $100 million a year. It's not going to be that far away. We're getting there in the NFL too, but at least an NFL player will play all 16 games if they're healthy, like a quarterback. If you have the best player on the NBA team, they're going to take nights off. And similar to what I said about the Patriots and Gillette Stadium and the crowd, if you're spending all this money to go to an NBA game and the guy's making $100 million and he doesn't feel like he needs to play that night, like the NBA is a spectacle too. So that's becoming an issue. The three-pointer, Caitlin Clark wants there to be a 4-point line. That's what she told the Kelseys on their podcast. I don't love that idea. Okay, I don't think that's going to make anything better. Nobody wants to watch unbalanced basketball. That's why I like March Madness. It's balanced. The three hasn't ruined college basketball yet. And like it's ruined the NBA. And I think what the NBA needs to do is just to lean into its history, its records, its storylines. The same way baseball needs to. The NBA needs to lean into the Celtics, the Lakers, the Pistons need to get good again. Some of these teams, the Bulls need to get good again. That's what they need to do. They need to lean into their stars. There's nobody to grab the mantle. I like Anthony Edwards. He plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's not a huge market. I've been there. It's a great place for basketball. Not a huge nationwide market. Jason Tatum plays for the Celtics. Doesn't act like a superstar. I like the dude. He's not that guy. He's not the big media personality. They need that. All right. They also need to do something about the three pointer. I don't know what that is. I'm not a basketball guy. But the attitude that, oh, well, the sport will change on its own isn't a compelling one. And Caitlin Clark knows a lot about changing sports. She completely changed her side, the women's side. Um, and that style of play in the women's game is they still call traveling. They still drive to the basket. She takes a lot of pointers. I think she made more than any other person ever in college basketball history. But she passes. She drives to the basket. She plays a multi-dimensional game. The women's game is there. The men's game is not compelling. It's chuck and duck. The air show. I'm not into that. So she might not think it needs to change because she loves basketball and she grew up in it and she breathes it and she's one of the best in her game. But for the casuals who are causing the ratings to decline, it's not the diehards like her. It's the casuals that they need to win back. And if they don't change something, they're not going to win them back. Is the issue. All right, speaking of winning things back, all right, we're gonna try and recoup some of our bad NFL takes on our NFL preview show with Cam and Kyle next week. We had some bad takes to start the week, my Sam Darnold one being one of them. We're gonna try and recoup some of those in the coming week when we do our playoff preview. I'm also going to have Josh Ricker on the show to talk soccer. Maybe I'll pick his brain about relegation and how that could work in the United States with some of our sports. But that's what's up coming ahead on season 7 of the program. I appreciate you all tuning in. If you'd like to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, you can do so on Apple, Spotify, Google, or Stitcher. You can also follow us on socials at Homefield Pod on Instagram and Twitter. We're going to try and get some more content out now that I have a little bit more technical skill here in season 7 than I did in years past. But I appreciate you all listening to us on this episode of Homefield Advantage. We'll be back next week.